What's up, everyone? Jared Sandler here with you. Hope everyone had a great 4th of July weekend. Wishing you a happy Monday and a great start to your week. It is a Cowboys Monday, so we've got some Cowboys chatter to get to today. As always, if there's something you'd like me to discuss that perhaps I haven't yet, feel free to tweet me at Jared Sandler. Post in the comments. However you can get a hold of me. If you know me and you can text me, shoot me a text. Doesn't matter. But I really want to discuss the things that you're interested in talking about. So please do not be shy. I would also appreciate if you'd consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, or sharing the content with your friends and family or anyone who you think might find it enjoyable. Or if you hate it, share it with your worst enemies. Doesn't matter to me. I would appreciate if some eyeballs got on this video. Just a reminder, if you're not familiar with the channel, all sorts of content here, commentaries, interviews, both funny and serious, and try throw some other kind of wacky projects on here as well. So feel free to surf throughout the channel to try and get a sense of what sort of content we're offering here. All right, before we get into the NFL, I want to start with college football. Apparently, the Ivy League is scheduled to vote this week as to whether or not they want to push their season to the spring. They were one of the first, if not the first, to shut down sports back at the beginning of all this. They appear to be at the forefront of the discussion of football right now. And I just think that, first of all, the NFL and college levels and certainly high school, I don't know how these things are planning on scheduling on or starting on time with the way, the numbers are responding to our actions, essentially, in the way the virus is spreading. I think the NFL has the best chance to start on time just because these are professionals and they get paid to do it. And if they say, hey, we don't care about the ramifications, we want our money and we want it now, I guess there's a voice and a power in that. Whereas with college athletes and high school athletes, they don't, first of all, they don't have the same voice. It's not like high school athletes have a union, not like college athletes have a union where they can fight for what they want, even if it is what they want. But I also think we got to consider the fact that these kids aren't getting paid to play. This is not how they, are making their living, right now. And to compromise their ability to make a living this way in the future by putting them at risk is something that I think people are going to take very seriously and think long and hard about. And so I think at the collegiate level, we're going to see football in the spring. I don't think we're going to see it in the fall, certainly not on time. It'll be interesting to see how the Ivy League votes. That's something to follow later this week, because I wouldn't be surprised, even though we don't think of the Ivy League as the epicenter of college sports, it isn't. I would not be surprised if other conferences consider falling. Now, that's not a decision that should be taken lightly, because you eliminate college football this year, schools are going to lose lots of money, and that means a lot of programs are going to be cut. But even if you push it to the spring, my understanding is still some programs are going to be cut. So that's not a decision that should be taken lightly at all. Now, speaking of scheduling and possible changes, the NFLPA has recommended that there are no preseason games. That's their desire. Not a big surprise. As far as this year, that makes a lot of sense. And it would follow the college model where, hey, your first game is the game that counts. And it would honestly make more sense to do that in the NFL than in college football, because in college football, especially, prior to the playoff, these teams, some of them would play a big-time game, their first game of the season, and if they lose that, their national championship hopes, if they are a team of that caliber, are diced. Maybe they can get lucky and the right teams can lose, but then they've got to run the table if they have any hope. Whereas in the NFL, yeah, every game matters, but if you lose your first game, it's not like your Super Bowl chances are cut in half or even more than that. But the NFL is going to follow that model. They're never, in my opinion, going to completely go in that direction, because there's a lot of money to be made off of preseason games, and we know that the owners want to make their money. Another Cowboys-related nugget before we get into the heart of all this, David Njoku, the talented tight end out of Miami who plays for the Browns, has, through his agent, apparently requested a trade. The Browns, if you recall, signed Austin Hooper to a big deal this offseason, and David Njoku, you'd imagine, now becomes the second tight end, and he wants to go to a place where he can be the first tight end. The Browns have a ton of weapons. With Njoku, without Njoku, they've got a ton of weapons. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt in the backfield. Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham at the receiver position, and Austin Hooper at tight end. No excuses this year for Baker Mayfield, and those weapons are even sexier if David Njoku remains. Now, the Cowboys do not have anyone proven at tight end in Blake Jarwin or Dalton Schultz or whomever you want to throw into that mix. But I would contend that while I think David Njoku would have a chance to make the Cowboys better, and certainly we've seen plenty of systems in which two tight ends have excelled. I don't know, I'd have to go back in those two tight end systems. Did they also have three dynamic receivers and one of the best running backs in the NFL? And I guess my point is, while David Njoku could make the Cowboys better, I just don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's necessary to spend the resources it would require to get David Njoku, considering what the Cowboys have in place. What would it require? Probably not a first-round pick, but I would not be surprised if it's a second-round pick. If not, you're looking at a third and a fourth, maybe a third this year, a fourth next year. I know that it might not seem like a lot, but again, if you're going to extend Dak Prescott, you're going to give him a big chunk of the pie with the money you've already paid to certain guys and the money you're going to likely have to pay to other guys in the subsequent years. Those draft picks are valuable, and I'd much rather hold on to those draft picks if I'm going to trade them to fill a position that's of greater need, and that would likely be on the defensive side of the ball. All right, let's get to something here. ESPN had a recent, I guess, story or feature where they took a look at all 32 NFL teams and provided some facts and nuggets and things to consider in advance of training camp. So I wanted to look at the Cowboys profile that they put together here. First of all, they identify their 2020 Football Power Index preseason rank as 5th. We discussed that about a month or so ago, where they stack up, and I thought it was interesting that the Cowboys were ranked that highly based on the Football Power Index. But that's where they enter training camp at this point, at least, 5th. They've got 8 returning starters on offense, 5 on defense. Now, there are 3 nuggets to know about the Cowboys. The first involves Dak. Since 1993, according to this article, it's the 6th instance of a quarterback receiving the exclusive franchise tag. And all but one of those previous 5 ended up signing a long-term deal in his tagged year. Of course, the one who didn't is the most recent, and that's Kirk Cousins. Prescott's 40 wins as a starter since entering the league in 2016 trails only Tom Brady, and his 10 instances of a QBR of at least 90 in a game are the most in the NFL in that time. I think with any sports discussion, you can probably find statistics out there or anecdotal contributions, certainly, that play on both sides of a discussion. If a player's good or if he's not good, if he's great or not great. I get it. If you're not a Dak guy out there, you can probably point to your 2 or 3 party tricks that help you illustrate why Dak's not, what other people believe him to be. I just think that there's an overwhelming amount of evidence out there that Dak deserves the money. Doesn't mean he's the best quarterback in the NFL, and it doesn't guarantee that he's going to get better. But Dak right now is easily a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, and I think that this year we'll speak of him as a top 5 quarterback in the NFL just based on his 2020 performance. Whatever the case is, signing him to a long-term deal does free up immediate cap space if the Cowboys were to maneuver in any ways in addition to the roster they have, whether it's Jadeveon Clowney, or if they were to trade for Jamal Adams, it would help kind of guarantee some of that money for an extension. But the thing that stands out to me, I'll go back to this. We're in the heart of this discussion, right? We're in DFW, so we're going to be maybe the most passionate about either side of the equation. We see this guy a ton, and emotionally it's tough to disconnect. I really value in these situations what the national opinion is from the experts who are not as emotionally connected. And listen, an expert's opinion, an expert analyst's opinion is not always right, but the majority of these experts that are not local to DFW, whether it's a part of ESPN or NFL Network or any of these outlets, they really value Dak highly. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean across the board they all value Dak higher than Wentz. Some people do value Wentz higher than Dak, and that's fine. But they all value Dak, and that to me says something. So Now, I'll say this. No excuses for Dak this year. Same reason there are no excuses for Baker. No excuses for Dak. He's got all the weapons he needs. All right, nugget number 2 is about Mike McCarthy. After not coaching last season, McCarthy takes over a Cowboys team that finished at 500 for the 4th time in 9 full seasons under Jason Garrett. Since '07, McCarthy has 8 different seasons with at least 10 wins, tied for second most in that span. And in the postseason, his 10 playoff victories since '06 trails only Bill Belichick for the most in the NFL. He's trying to become the first NFL coach to win a Super Bowl with 2 different teams. Crazy to think that no one has done it previously. Listen, I think Mike McCarthy did an outstanding job in Green Bay. He won a Super Bowl. They were in the playoffs almost every year. You know, if you want to credit that to the fact they had one of the best quarterbacks of all time, sure, go ahead. But Mike McCarthy, I think as the head coach, has the ability to derail that train and certainly can help amplify it. And I think that there was a period of time where Mike McCarthy was, as valuable as a win per season, perhaps. And we know his quarterback whisperer abilities. I think towards the end of that tenure, he got stale. Things got stale. And we always hear about how sometimes a coach's voice just gets old and players start tuning that voice out. And I think that's kind of what happened. Didn't help that he has a stubborn quarterback in Green Bay, or had a stubborn quarterback in Green Bay who was maybe at the forefront of tuning him out. So I think things got stale. I do like the fact that he wanted to take a year off to evaluate. Whether or not that evaluation is going to lead to changes, we'll have to wait and see. But, he's definitely saying all the right things. And at the end of the day, I think if you consider Jason Garrett versus fill in the blank, you're almost always at a coaching disadvantage. Or maybe better put, you were almost never at a coaching advantage. Maybe there were times where he was going up against an equally confusing coach or equally confused coach. But, I think now the Cowboys are in a position where perhaps, not just with Mike McCarthy, but the staff as a whole, they'll have more advantages on the sidelines. All right, number 3, in the past 10 seasons, the Cowboys have a win percentage of .538, yet they've reached the postseason only 3 times in that span. Dallas hasn't reached the NFC Championship game in its past 10 playoff appearances. That's tied for the longest streak ever with the Kansas City Chiefs, who recently broke that streak. Those streaks all coming since the 1970 merger. Listen, I talked about this the other day. I think Cowboys fans are tired of having good teams that get to the playoffs, but get bounced prior to the NFC title game, and then the narrative is, well, but hey, gosh, imagine next year. We're frustrated now, but this is all set up beautifully next year. We certainly said that back when the Cowboys lost to the Packers in Dallas on that Jared Cook catch and throw from Aaron Rodgers, because that was the beginning of Dak and Zeke. We've had almost a handful of years, and Cowboys haven't gotten any further than they did that year. And I think that it's time for, whether it's Will McClay or Steven or Jerry, to take a chance on this team. That's why I wanted them to go out and get both Jadeveon Clowney and Jamal Adams. As risky as that might be, I'm tired of them taking chances on individual players, like an Aldon Smith or a Randy Gregory or a Greg Hardy, before that, Terrell Owens, but not taking a chance on the team. Take a chance on this team. You don't have to totally sacrifice the next 10 years for this year, but take a chance on this team, because I think that a lot of people are tired with the mediocrity in general, and then the ordinary end of season results. There's nothing that's that intriguing about the Cowboys' last 10 years from a playoff appearance and success standpoint at all. It's not like they're getting so close and they're just not getting over that hump. They're not even getting to the NFC Championship game. Something's got to change. I do think that they have a great shot to get there and maybe even surpass that particular game this year. But I think you look at the defense, there's work that needs to be done, and I would love to see the Cowboys not just be a little aggressive, but be super aggressive and go out and get both Clowney and Adams and take a chance on this team. Let's break this streak that, again, is tied for the Chiefs' inactive streak now that they've surpassed that level and won a Super Bowl. But they're tied for the Chiefs, the longest streak in the NFL since the merger in 1970. No. Let's break that streak. And I think being super aggressive and rolling the dice on this team for an organization that has no issue rolling the dice in other areas would make a lot of sense. All right, that's going to be it for today. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. Again, would appreciate it if you would like, subscribe, and certainly share with your friends as we continue the sports conversation several times a week right here on this channel. Until then, have a wonderful, wonderful start to your week.